Greetings. This is a Flat-Tappet hydraulic lifter from a Ford CVH. Here's another one. Now, you probably shouldn't be rebuilding these because typically, if you have to rebuild them, it's best to replace them. Because, like for instance, these have these bottle cap tops. I know some of you are quite resourceful, so some of you will be able to put these back on without worry. But usually, when you try putting them back on, they don't stay because you have to flare them out to get them off. And shaping them back to normal can be extremely difficult, and that is not something you want coming off inside your engine. But to install these, should you pull them out of your head, remove the rockers, whatever, to install these, they have to be installed dry, and you know that they're dry when you can squeeze the plunger up and down, and it'll return nicely. Not like it free floats towards the top here, but then the inner valve body is stuck halfway down. Or worse, if the whole thing is pumped up, you can't squeeze it at all. Now you can take this over to a vise and slowly work it out. Oil will come out some way, somehow, but it's best to clean these out because there can be tons of oil on the inside. Because if these are original, they're coming up on 40 years old of what originally was conventional oil. So when you pop these suckers open, they have quite the smell. Ford says that you're actually able to bleed these out by taking like a dental pick and sticking it down inside this this inlet port for the oil, the bleeding hole they call it. So apparently you're supposed to stick that in there and then be able to bleed it out, and then it'll go up and down like normal. But that is not the case. It's almost never the case. So have to resort to taking it apart. I should mention, if any of your tappets are dished like this, you need to get all new tappets. And you can imagine your cam will match this perfectly, in which case you need all new cam too. Camshaft is pretty cheap, around $35 for the one for your engine. The lifters aren't too expensive either. They're $40 to $80, depending on how nice you want them. But again, you need a match set. So how do you take them apart? Well, on the top is that bottle cap, like I mentioned, and kind of the only way to take that apart is grab like a precision screwdriver and just work that flange around it out. Once you do that, you're left with your bottle pop top. You set that to the side, and then this plunger will come out immediately behind it. Now behind that is our valve body, all of this. The actual valve body, our check ball, and then our check ball spring and retainer for the spring. All that comes out in one piece. But when you get to that point, it'll most likely be stuck like this. The reason why is the check valve down in there forms a vacuum inside the bottom of the canister here. So then it kind of hydrolocks at the bottom between the oil and the vacuum air that is created by the spring trying to push the body up while the check ball is sealing all that stuck. So the best way to get it out is you can take something, again, like a screwdriver, look down in there, you see that chrome check ball, poke that with the screwdriver a couple times, it'll help like equalize the pressure. Then what you can do is take a bolt that's just a tiny bit smaller than the inside of that valve body, which is just this. So a bolt that is just a tad smaller on the inside, threaded bolt. And then you can take it, tilt it away to create a bind, and doing so will actually pull that check valve body out with the bolt. This could take a few tries depending on how stuck everything is. Sometimes it will get stuck towards the top here and your bolt won't pull it out, in which case you can take something like your pliers, grab just the top edge, and I say only the top edge because you won't damage anything here. Should you grab too deep, like on this larger portion, you can mar the check valve body, and then it won't go up and down properly. Once you take it out, it looks like this. That is the check ball retainer with the spring inside and the check ball. So what you do is you take your screwdriver, you find the gap inside there, exploit it, so poke your screwdriver in it and then pry out, and then the ball, the spring, and the cup will all come falling out of there. So it's very careful that you do this either pointed down towards a soft rag, or again pointed down sideways into a contained dish, because should you lose the check valve, the cup, or the spring, you need a whole new lifter. And if you need one new lifter, you need all new lifters. If you need all new lifters, you need a camshaft. That's really how this goes. So anyhow, once that is out, you'll find the spring deep down inside. Look at that, there's a spring. You can barely see it, but it is there. And once you have the spring out, you can simply tip that upside down. The spring will always come out that way. Once it's empty, you can clean this out. Sometimes there's machining dust or metal chunks down in there from the milling process of manufacturing these. But if these are original, you'll also find the stinkiest oil you've ever found down inside of there from getting crazy hot, and it's conventional from the 1980s, so it smells dreadful, and there can be a lot of gunk down in there, so it's a good idea to wash that out, wash out all these parts, and then prepare for reassembly. Reassembly is pretty easy. I'll show you with this one here. So you take your spring, simply set that back down inside there. These forward ones are not directional, you don't have to worry about that. Reassemble your valve body. So remember to put the spring inside your cup, put your ball on top of that spring, and then very carefully push that cup back onto the end of the valve assembly. And once it's gone in there and this cup isn't loose or anything, stick that inside your bore. Now it will only go down so far, and that's because again the check valve is creating a seal. So what you do, take a small screwdriver, gently poke the check valve, and then it'll just drop right down by itself. And it'll only go so far. You can try pressing down the check valve and the side of the wall, release the check valve, and it'll still float up a good chunk of the distance towards the top here. So it's not something to worry about, as long as when you tip it upside down, it doesn't come falling out. If it does, it means your check valve is not sealing, or your sides are moored. Could be a number of things. Once you're here, you now put on your top plunger. Now at this point, you can actually double check your work before you seal it up. And this is good. You feel it go up and down the full distance. And then you can take your bottle cap, set that on. It's a good idea to flange the sides back to a perpendicular shape. And then once you do that, you grab a socket that fits around here. So for this one, I think it's like a 14 or 15 millimeter socket. Stick it on there. Take your socket, or if you want a junk lifter, and just go clunk. Double check it's sealing all the way. Like this one's lifted up on this end, so you'd want to push it down again, and double check the other side. You just have to make sure that it's seated down all the way. If it's pulling up on one end, that's no good. And if the sides are still flared out in some spot, that's no good. So you have to be careful that like even the top isn't dished up or anything like that. Otherwise, it'll pose problems. Because if this guy is loose in any way, shape, or form, it's going to bounce, and it has the potential of escaping the rocker underneath, or it can escape the lifter underneath the rocker arm, float around your engine and wreak havoc. But that's pretty much all there is to these. Again, don't pump them up before you install.